2 years now, and main responsibility is to take care of the DevOps and developer tools business, basically. So, sales guy. And I come work in a team called DX, which is shortened for Developer Experience, and then excluding me, all the other people in the team are technical evangelists, really helping partners and startups and students and etc. to utilize Microsoft technologies. And now for the next 30 minutes I will basically give a short overview on what has happened to Microsoft on this area, then give you the Microsoft DevOps story. So I think you've seen and heard a lot of DevOps workflows drawn by different vendors, so I will give you one more of those. And then as a last topic I will briefly give you my observations on the discussions that I'm mainly having in Finland with customers that have been developing for a long time with Microsoft developer tools and have this big legacy software and they want to start benefiting from DevOps and just to give you observations on that, on relating this topic. But to go forward, so to start with that, what is going with Microsoft on this area? Because I think during the last couple of years there has been happening a lot of stuff and basically everything that you can see announced regarding DevOps solutions, developer tools, and Azure as a development platform is one way or another typically related to this vision that Microsoft aims to provide developer tools for any developer to create applications on any platform. And this is the ambitious way. You know that it's not there yet, but to give you an example on how this has been seen during the last year. First of all is the open source momentum. As you probably heard and seen that a lot of Microsoft is opening their own development tools and also opening up and inviting other open source tooling as part of, let's say, DevOps ecosystem. And I think in this you can mention that in Azure, I guess 30 to 40% of the current workloads are Linux-based workloads. So that's a big business already to Microsoft, and I think we have in Finland we have one guy whose main responsibility is drive open source workloads in Azure. So that's quite a big change if you think about in the past when selling just Microsoft licenses. The other example that I have in here is on the commercial space, how Microsoft is expanding their way. I don't know if any of you watched Build event like two weeks ago, but Microsoft basically announced that the acquisition of Xamarin company, who has Xamarin has this kind of cross-platform mobile development tooling, and what Microsoft announced is that basically they're giving those tools for free as a free part of current tooling setup. So in a way, a big move that you first purchase a company and then you give those tools for free. So it just tells the aggressive way that Microsoft has currently in this space. And then as a third example is the partnering and the extension ecosystem. This is now regarding DevTools and DevOps tooling, and basically Microsoft has a lot of different kind of marketplaces, and of course all the DevOps tooling has a REST IP, so you can build your own extensions, but already built inside you have quite a lot of things. So that's about that where Microsoft is, just to briefly. Then if we go to the topic of DevOps and what that means in Microsoft, and the reason why I'm obviously this telling is that depending on which vendor you're talking and to whom you're talking, it varies quite a lot in a way that how you see the DevOps. At the end, I was sitting here yesterday, and I think that the workflow, the basic high-level workflow slides are more or less similar, but they are just a bit different approaches depending on with whom vendor you're talking about. But we know that all of DevOps has a lot to do with all of these topics as being discussed at this event as well. And if we go to the Microsoft DevOps story, it basically is put into these three categories, and I think most of you who has read the book Phoenix Project recognize these, because the origin of this is that Microsoft actually hired Gene Kim, who is the author of that book, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and basically through that kind of formalized the Microsoft approach to this. And if we go through those 3 phases, so the first phase, continuous delivery in this case, with that we basically mean that how is the code put from the developer's desk into the production, and in that cycle you can see that there is, of course, you need development tools, you need testing tools, you need testing automation, you need dev and test infra, you need release automation, release management, and all of those mainly focused, I would say, on automation on this side. So that's the first phase, and typically this is the phase that everybody starts with DevOps. But when you have stuff in production, to close the loop and to get the workflow in place, you also need to monitor applications, and not only how they are performing in the environment, do you have enough infra, etc., but also get telemetry, how is your applications used. And in there comes the point that how you're collecting that data, how is it real time, and then how are you using that, all of that data that you're gathering to make better decisions for your next cycle time. So basically in these 2 halves are around those you can build the kind of DevOps environment and the tooling setup, and then Microsoft has a lot of tools in there, and you can also plug in your open source tools if you're using them. Then the third phase of this, basically the continuous learning phase, doesn't have that much to do with tooling anymore. This is more of a cultural thing that if you think about it, in an ideal world, you have both of those sides automated and working fully, and you have all the roles and responsibilities in place. You should be able to kind of experiment with your application. And perfect example of this, what I typically tell is from our own product development, is that the organization that develops our DevOps tooling, or TFS, or Visual Studio Team Services, and in there they have every 3 weeks new release. Basically they are gathering telemetry data, for example, on how different features are used, and if they see that there is a feature that hasn't been used for quite a time, they take that feature onto the developer's desk, make a facelift on that feature, and put it back to the production in the next phase, kind of after 3 weeks. Then they start to again monitor that, how is it used, and there are examples when they see that, okay, this feature is not used even after we did the facelift for this, so let's take it away on the next cycle. So then they take it away, and this kind of a approach, so that you're learning all the time and developing new value for the end users, really, not to just develop new features. And then, not to talk about the specific products, but just to give another view on the same cycle with a bit more details on how is the tooling structured around this. So basically, you need tooling to manage your backlogs and requirements, and where you do your planning and prioritization. Then basically you need tools for developing, you need testing tools, you need version control, you need some sort of build automation in place, and then you need dev and test infra. And all of this should be automated and easily available, and supporting cross-platform or whatever platform you're developing on. Then moving on, you have the area of release management, and in this area I think Microsoft has been put a lot of focus and effort now to get tooling for kind of release management as a service, if you can have seen or tried it out. So that's a big area when you kind of automate and orchestrate the pipeline from the development to the production through different environments. And in there it's about managing the whole stack, not only the infrastructure stack or the app, but to manage it all the way to the approval stages and automate as heavily as possible in there. Then when it comes to the actual production, the tooling that IT needs, I think Microsoft, the key in here is to provide hybrid scenarios, so whether you're doing on-prem or cloud or hybrid, all of those are fully supported, and then they are integrated into the other tooling in this DevOps environment. So that's the tooling for the IT ops guys. And then, as mentioned already, you need to have the analytics and monitoring tools. So I think around these 5 areas are the key toolings that Microsoft sees in DevOps environments. Then if we go to the, I think I'm really quick because I've spent like 10 minutes already. I'm on the last mile of this presentation. But then if we think about how about the legacy software development houses, as I mentioned, that I typically, inside Microsoft, the account managers comes to me that my customers talking about something called DevOps, that are you the right guy or who can really help on this? And typically then I go and have some sort of initial discussion on this. And if we think about why the customers have the pressure to talk about this area, is that those customers that have a lot of legacy software, is that they are being pressured by the mobility side of things. So basically they need to extend to any device, go beyond Windows. In this case, typically it might be that they are first done to iOS and Android in mobile space and then maybe Windows. But to go cross-platform, then is the cloud talk, as already Nordcloud spoke quite a lot of this, that they see that there is a value in cloud, but don't maybe know how that could be utilized with their current setup with the legacy software. And then they see that the DevOps could be something that could enable all of this in addition to the cloud and cross-platform tooling. So this is typically the starting point. And then if we look on the applications that you've seen also probably this kind of three-layered segmenting of applications. And typically if you think about DevOps, it can be best applied into the client and the system of engagement levels. And by the way, in here, when I talk about modern business applications, this is not to talk about mobile modern business applications, but in generic-wise modern business applications. And then on the bottom, you have the systems of records, where typically the customers see that their legacy software is. But this is a bit provocative, but typically it might even be that the legacy system holds inside all of these three layers. This is kind of put it in the black and white, but still it's a kind of if we talk about minimum viable product, that's a really large viable product in this case. That cannot be kind of released that often. And in that discussion, when we go through that, how to benefit from automation, from the monitoring, from the fast-paced delivery, and getting really value for the end customers, the observations that I've so far gotten is that, first of all, the DevOps can, in this case, only benefit in increase of efficiency with the current legacy systems. So you're not actually getting into the phase where you can really innovate fast and get really value fast to your customers, but you can get cost efficiency to your development and IT operations through automation and using cloud infra for dev and tests. So this is the first that typically comes in. And because of that, the second observation is that actually to be able to move really forward in this space, you need to make modernization decision first for your legacy application. And this is typically actually a really big, so to speak, big decision, because this impacts the whole business. If you think about legacy software, that for some ISV that has been selling that as a service or as a product to their customers for 10 to 15 years, and now they are facing the fact that they need to modernize the whole application. So how does that impact into their business models with that, and how do they do that in collaboration with their customers and keeping those customers still happy? But this is typically the one that needs to be done first before really going and starting to implement heavily the DevOps practices. Then, as a good point, that cloud plays a significant driver in this, because the good thing about cloud is that if you want to start evaluating how would you modernize your software development, with cloud services you can do that really quickly and low cost. So you don't need to put 3 months pilot project or put $100K just to try out something. You can even try things in 2 to 3 days with some PaaS services or kind of microservices type of architecture. So that's a good thing. So that typically enables in there. And then as a final observation, when it comes to the actual tooling, that the tooling part is the enabler in here. I think Nordcloud also mentioned that. I think many speakers has been mentioning this, but that's enabler, and you need to do a lot of work and transformation on top of that. And in Microsoft case, this means that you can basically plug in whatever tooling you have. You can build whatever is needed, but with whatever tooling, and in on-prem, hybrid, or in cloud for your DevOps. But then on top of that comes the actual transformation, which is a bigger thing. And one example on that is once more from Microsoft's own product development, where during the last 3 years they went through a big DevOps change, and one of the impacts on that was that before we had development and testing people, and now there's only engineering people. So those roles are not anymore divided into two different categories. So, and that in that case meant like losing like 6,000 test people or reorganizing those people. So if you think about it, it's a huge impact compared to the tooling side in this case. And so as a summary, I think we have plenty of time for discussion after this, that when you think about DevOps and the discussions that I've had, with the current legacy setup, you can only get the efficiency side of DevOps. But if you really want to start and enable innovation and creating new value faster for your customers, you need to also step up in the architecture level of your applications to start using microservice architecture and PaaS type of services. So you need to do both of those. If we think about the starting point is that the point where you have big legacy software. So that was basically it. Quite fast.
Yeah, quite fast. Thank you, Lauri. Any question for Lauri?
Yeah, what is Microsoft response for these basic DevOps technologies like Ansible and Docker? Are there Microsoft going to support those?
Yes, I think I'm not, as I mentioned, I'm not a technical specialist, but we have our own story on Docker, so that's fully supported in Azure, and so.
Is Microsoft going to publish any product on its own for this DevOps technology?
Don't know.
Microsoft Server, Windows, next Windows Server. Yeah, it's supporting Docker.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So Windows 10 beta release as a native tool is also supporting now.
Yeah. Okay. So you know, you know, and yet you had some questions.
I'm coming from business intelligence development, not software development. Have you worked with other areas except software development? How do you see DevOps in that story, where we have more kind of, at least it seems harder to move out of that legacy software?
So meaning kind of with the BI people to talk on this. I think it's when it comes to the actual services in Azure and the business intelligence services that we have, those are already heavily pushed so that those should be a part of that DevOps ecosystem. So I haven't had that much discussions, but I think in the future I'll have more kind of interfaces with those business intelligence people when the maturity level of these companies raises a bit, then I guess then it comes to the discussion on the analytical side of things.
You are talking a lot about open source. Do you have any major releases coming to open source community like that we can contribute?
I think the biggest, for now, the biggest releases were made in Build. In open source wise, I think they open sourced basically the Visual Studio Code tooling. I think Xamarin is also, some part of it is open sourced already. So yeah, and ASP.NET, and previously there has been already the .NET Core is open source. So, but I don't know the roadmap for open sourcing things. But I suggest to watch the few weeks back Build releases. There you have the latest news on that. Somebody.
Did we have one more?
Yeah, I was actually hoping to see a brief demo of the new Microsoft DevOps tool, but I don't know if we have any time for that. Because
No,
I
unfortunately.
haven't seen it, but I know
Okay.
there's a lot of suspicious
Yeah.
Linux people here.
I think through EFI Code we can definitely arrange that kind of a online or face-to-face demonstration if needed. But I was not prepared, and I think there has to be a smarter guy than me to demo that.
Okay, I think we will thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And now it's time